Does this sound like your child? Mother of a 7-year-old says that he has difficulties staying on task, has issues with focus, processing information, completing work alone. It sounds like a lot of kids, doesn't it? But we know that every child is a unique learner. So what can we speculate or interpret from this? And I want to add in one other factor, which is that she says that this child does not give up very easily. A lot of times when you have kids with cognitive struggles, cognitive weaknesses that underlie these kinds of observations, you have that's a reason for kids to frequently give up. If you are having struggle staying on task, if you're having trouble understanding something, if you're having trouble with any kind of those underlying processing issues, it takes a long time and that kind of thing, it can be really discouraging. It is really discouraging for so many kids, and that tends to make them want to give up. So when I hear that a child doesn't give up very easily, that's a pretty interesting situation. So, which means he's probably getting it, his understanding, his ability to interpret the information that's coming in, his ability to reason, to understand, to make sense of what's coming at him. He probably can do that. And so he knows if he sticks with it long enough or whatever, that he'll actually be able to accomplish whatever the task is. But there are some other skills that are probably standing in the way. Staying on task and focus. Now, it's interesting that to hear both those things. Sometimes we hear a child has difficulty staying on task, which implies sustaining his attention or her attention. So it may go just their attentional stamina, if you will, the energy and the effort that it takes to stay on task is a lot. And so therefore they will lose their ability to pay attention. Or they're paying attention to so many things, and that has to do with focus. So typically sustaining attention and then focusing and choosing exactly what to focus on could be two different aspects of attention, two different processes: sustained attention and selective attention. Selective attention means your ability to screen out distractions and to eliminate those. So it's interesting to hear both of these together, because it probably suggests that there are different aspects of attention at play and that are making things difficult for this child. And so we don't want to just support one and not the other. We really want to be able to look at what we can do for both aspects of attention. That's why it's so important when you're thinking about a cognitive training program to really be able to know that you've got something that's comprehensive and is going to address the full range of cognitive processes, not just attention, but other cognitive processes. She also lists, so we talked about the attention side of things. And then she says processing information. So processing information could be lots of different things. It could be the ability to understand, to form a concept, to reason with information. And that could be anything from all kinds of different complex reasoning processes. It could be verbal reasoning, could be abstract reasoning, could be spatial reasoning. So we reason with different kinds of aspects of our logic and reasoning skills. We understand things. For some people, it's easier to understand verbal information that they read or hear. And when they hear an explanation of something, that is the easiest way for their brains to make sense of it. For others, it's going to be visual spatial. So where things are in space, if you can construct a model of something, then it's going to make sense to them. Models and diagrams and things like that are also very useful for people who have stronger abstract reasoning skills. So abstract reasoning and spatial reasoning are both types of nonverbal reasoning. Doesn't involve language. One is conceptual, abstract relationships. The other one is physically where things are in space relative to each other. So we could say, well, maybe, this child has issues actually processing and understanding information. It certainly sounds like that. But then when I go back to the fact that this child doesn't give up very easily, it makes it sound like it might be something else. Because if they don't give up, then they think they can get it or understand it or do it. So there are other aspects of cognitive skills, other types of cognitive skills that could very well be impeding their ability to process information. One certainly could be processing speed. And we see this a lot. Actually, processing speed is the number one weakness, or it seems sort of funny to call something a number one weakness, but it is in fact that. It's in general the weakest skill that kids have that we measure, that they come to us with when they're struggling with learning. So it's an issue for lots and lots of kids. And as I've said probably a million times, and I would probably say a million more times, processing speed and intelligence are not correlated. They're not. It doesn't mean if somebody has slower processing that they're not as intelligent. That is absolutely not the case. And very often we see kids who are really smart, have really strong reasoning skills, but who process more slowly. So they don't correlate. They don't go together. But it can impair the processing process, the understanding, especially if it's something very complex, and it takes a long time for them to make sense of what's coming in. They could be really good processors, but just need a little bit more time. So it may look like difficulty with processing information. And then completing work alone. So another great clue there, which is when kids have difficulty completing work alone, independently, it could, a lot of times people point to attention. So if they have difficulty staying on task, if they don't have the mental and attentional stamina to stick with something in order to complete the task, that could be an issue. A lot of times, processing speed could also, by the time they get through something, they may be mentally exhausted and have difficulty sticking with it. And another executive function, so just as a reminder, there are 3 cognitive skills that are a special class of skills called executive functions. Executive functions are how we organize ourselves, how we ensure that we get our work done, that kind of thing. One is working memory, one is inhibitory control, and the third is cognitive flexibility. And of course, any of those could be at play here, but I think particularly of working memory. So when students have difficulty completing work alone, it's often because of working memory issues. Working memory is the ability to hold information in our minds while we're thinking about it. So it can impact things like reading comprehension, our ability to complete a multi-step math problem, our ability to follow a set of instructions. And in the context of working alone, doing your homework, presumably, working memory is that thing that helps keep you focused on where you are in the process. So I'm halfway through my reading. I only have 15 more minutes to do of that. And then when I'm done with that, your brain just has in mind that it needs to do math and it needs to do science or whatever it might be. But keeping track of where you are, and so it kind of looks like focus a little bit because you don't know where to focus, but it's the ability of your mind really to hold those pieces in place and keep you on track, keep you knowing what you finished, what's next, just really where you are in that whole process. That could also be a big part of processing information. So we can come back to that and say, if, as would be very plausible in this case, this is a child who struggles with attention, both sustained and selective attention, and working memory, that would mean that they would be missing pieces of information, probably, as they're taking it in. Their attention goes up and down, ebbs and flows. It's not consistent. And so there are going to be gaps in the information that they're taking in, which is going to make it harder, of course, to process it. And then if they have difficulty keeping track of where they are in the process of doing their work, that's also going to be really challenging, both for processing information and then for being able to work independently. All of that, of course, would be consistent with a child's stick-to-itiveness and their commitment, their ability to follow through on things and not give up very easily, although it sure be tempting to do it. So this is a kid who's got the determination and the will, and if they have the skills, they're going to be able to learn and work independently with much, much more ease. And that's really the thing to remember, is that all of these skills can be strengthened. And when we understand exactly what's going on, I've speculated a bit today, but based on having worked with tons and tons and tons of kids and parents and families over the years. And so we would certainly do the cognitive assessment. We'd want to confirm those areas and make those connections to, what's happening when the child is working and studying and learning. And then we can build them. And whether it's attention, whether it's working memory, whether it's any, visual and auditory processing, sensory integration, and abstract, complex, verbal, spatial reasoning, different aspects of reasoning, different aspects of memory. I don't hear anything necessarily about memory in this, but memory or other skills that a lot of kids are struggling with these days, especially since the pandemic. So verbal memory and visual memory and more of the long-term memory aspects in addition to working memory. But all of these skills can be strengthened and in a pretty short period of time. And when they're stronger, then what you're going to see is a student who has not only more ability, but more confidence. When they know they can do it, when those skills are just there for them, that means they can take things on. They go into that homework or whatever the assignment might be with confidence. And then they're even less likely to give up. So some kids are easy for them to sort of get frustrated very quickly and give up. It's great to hear about a kid who doesn't do that, but that will become even stronger. They'll be even more confident and even more persistent in their accomplishment of their academic tasks and really everything they do in life. So I'm going to post a link below in the conversation. If anybody has any questions, let me know. I'd love to talk about them or your child if you have any questions that you'd like to explore. And I'll post a link to a webinar where we go through in detail the steps that parents can take to help their children become more capable and confident learners. In the meantime, I know it's Halloween, and so I hope everybody has a wonderful, safe, and joyful Halloween today.